All right. It's 90 yet. It's 30 for 30. However, it is my 98 for 98. The 98 seasons in the history of the New York Football Giants in 98 days. Probably not going to get it done in 98 days. I'm going to certainly try that, Keck, but I'm going to get it done before the beginning of the new season starts, this new season starts of September 10th against those Dallas Cowboys. Should be a good one. We're fortunate ahead. We're almost out of the 70s, almost into the 80s. We're almost in the land of the playoffs, in the land of the Super Bowls. We're almost into the land of winning football seasons, but we're not quite there yet. We're at 1978. This is when you're a kid, and you just seasons like this just scar you for life. Serious, just absolutely straight up scar you for life. You just kind of wonder after the seasons are over, like this one here. It's like, is life fair? Is there ever going to be a chance where I'm ever going to see a good football team? Am I ever going to see I guess I got spoiled a little early because when my first season was 1970. The Giants had a winning season, 9-5. Then 1971, they losing season. But 1972, they're back to 8-6. Both times 1970 missed the playoffs by one game. 1972, they missed the playoffs by two games. But they had good teams. So 2 out of the first 3 seasons I remember watching football. The Giants were okay. They were good. Just missed the playoffs. But then after that, from 73 on, and we're at 78. You just it's like, especially with the miracle of the Meadowlands. It was just like absolutely unbelievable, absolutely unbelievable. So this is the 1978, which happened to be the 54th season in the history of the New York Giants. Once again. Since pretty much we're talking the 1970s, we're talking a losing season. That's what you had. It was 1978, so this began the start of the 16-game schedule, and also started. Of course, it's all it is what it is, but all about the Benjamins. Started. It was an extra wild card match. Usually, what it was with the divisions, there was 4 teams in each conference make the playoffs. Playoffs made the playoffs. So it'd be 4. So there would be 1 wild card team, and then the 3 division winners, and they would wind up facing off against. So there'd be 2 playoff games, and then it'd be the championship game, and then then the champion, whoever won the championship, can obviously go to the Super Bowl. Not anymore. Starting this season, there was 5 teams from each conference. So the first weekend, it was two wild card teams. They played against each other. So the first weekend, there was just 2 playoff games. I guess you can say that the Eagles got what was coming to them in the wild card game. So the football gods were looking down on the Giants. I'll go over that in a little bit. So then what it was the first weekend there was just a wild card. There was just 2 wild card games. There was the 1 wild card game from the NFC, and 1 wild card from the AFC, and then they picked up the following weeks, and then there was 2 playoff games in each conference, which led to the championship games, which led to the Super Bowl. Super Bowl was a good one, real good one. I will go over that in a little bit, but I'll tell you what, I got the Giants. Halfway through the season, they were 5-3. I was like, oh my God, we might have a winning season. Oh my God. No. So we'll go over that though. So what does Wikipedia got to say about the New York Football Giants, 1978? 1978 New York Giants was the franchise's 45th season in the National Football League. Now remember, the Giants with 54th season would be the 59th season in the history of the National Football League. National Football League started in 1920. Giants started in 1925. The Giants are 5 years younger than the history of the NFL is. So, all right, in their first ever season that they had a 16-game schedule, the Giants looked to improve on their 5-9 record from 1977 because 1976, Giants started off 0-7. They got rid of the coach, Bill Arnsparger. They brought in interim coach, John McVay. So he finished the season off, and their final 7 games, they finished 3-4. And in their 4 losses, they only lost by a grand total of 20 points. They lost some, and the first game that they lost was they lost 10-0. So actually, their final 3 losses, they lost by grand total like 10 points. So they lost a bunch of close games, and they won 3. So I mean, it's too bad. Not too bad. So in 1977, John McVay, so they hired him for a 2-year contract, I believe it was. So, so in 1977, the John McVay's the leader. He's the captain of the ship now, and he went 5-9. Okay, all right, yeah. But so you're kind of hoping that this the next season, you improve upon that. Well, that's it. I mean, they at one time they were actually 5-3. But it was just not meant to be. All right, so let's see. The season saw the Giants get off to a hot start. They beat newcomer Tampa Bay in Tampa 19-13, despite being a 1-point underdog. Actually, the Giants played Tampa Bay 2 times this season. After a close loss to the rival Cowboys 34-24 the next week, the Giants beat Kansas City 26-10 and then the 49ers 27-10. Now, neither the Chiefs nor the 49ers at that particular point in time were very good. So, I mean, the Giants started off with, had the 3 wins, but one was to Tampa Bay, who in their first 2 seasons of existence only won 2 games. So they were coming into their 3rd season in existence only winning 2 games. They were 2-26. Coming into the, so then the Giants beat the Chiefs and the 49ers were not very good teams either. So the Giants had 3 wins, but they were against all bad teams, but they won. That's what counts, right? So the Giants started the season 3-1. I was like, oh my God, we might do good. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you. No. It was the first 3-1 start since 1969. However, in 1969, they would lose 7 games in a row. That's pretty much what happened here. Because in 1969, they started off 3-1, and they would finish the season 6-8. That was pretty much about what happened here. The Giants started off really good, 5-3, and then they would lose 7 of the last 8 games. Let's see here. However, the Giants then started to struggle, losing to the Atlanta Falcons 23-20 in a close one. Then the Cowboys beat them pretty good. I believe it was in Dallas 24-3. Following wins at home against the Bucs and the Redskins. Now they're starting to turn the tides on the Redskins, starting to beat the Redskins. The Giants were 5-3 after they beat the Bucs and the Redskins. 5-3. Then they went into a downfall, which saw them lose 6 of the next 7 and 8. Their next 6 games, and 7 of their final 8 games. In Week 12, the Giants played their arch rival, the Eagles, in a crucial game that saw the Giants fumble away the game on a Joe Pizarczyk fumble, and Herb Edwards picked it up and ran it back for a touchdown, giving the Eagles a 19-17 win. The play was dubbed the Miracle at the Meadowlands. The Giants never recovered from this game and got pummeled on the road to the 3-9 Bills. 41-17. We'll go over that one. That's a beaut. Despite the Giants had a 10, well, there wasn't a fourth quarter lead. It says this is wrong. It says despite having a 10-point lead in the fourth quarter, they didn't have a 10-point lead going in the fourth quarter. They were up 17-7 with about 5 minutes left to go in the third quarter. The Bills scored a touchdown in the third quarter to make it 17-14, and then the Bills scored 4 touchdowns in the last quarter. So anyway, then the final game of the season, they figured the Giants went to Philadelphia to have a rematch with the Eagles, and you figure, the Giants would, have some revenge on their minds, which I'm sure they did, and also would help maybe knock the Eagles out of the playoffs, out of the wild card. But the Eagles would wind up winning 20-3, and the Giants finished the season at 6-10. So it was just absolutely horrible. Absolutely horrible. All right, so let's see. All right, so let's go over the the New York Giants, their draft. All right. Let's see. So the Giants, who finished 5-9 the season before 1977. This would be thanks large in part to the miracle of the man. Now that you know, one of those things you probably would never know. I'm not sure if the Giants just finished 6-10. But there was no actually, if there was no miracle at the Meadowlands and the Giants finished 7-9, would John McVay have kept his job? Interesting question. Don't know if there's anybody alive that knows, except maybe Mr. Mara, John Mara. Maybe he might know, because I'm sure he was around when his father Wellington was there. But that's interesting to know. But anyway, this will also be the final season for John McVay. Giants would hire Ray Perkins starting in 1979. Right, so the Giants drafted 10th overall due to their 5-9 record the year before. So the Giants at number 10 overall took Gordon King. Now Gordon King had a very nice, a rather lengthy career. Let's say, there we go. Could they have done worse? Yeah. Could they have done better? Yeah. He played 1978 to 1985. Then he finished up the 2 seasons with the Jets. It's a real shame, real shame, because he was with the Giants from 78 to 85. 1986 and 1987, he finished up his career with the Jets. Had he been able to hang in there like one more year, I'm not sure why they just let him go. I'm not sure. But had he been able to hang around for one more season with the Giants, he would have got himself a Super Bowl ring. But he was okay. He was a big guy. What was he? He was 6'6", 275 pounds. Back then in 1978, that was a nice 6'6". That was big back then, right? 275 pounds. That was a big tackle back then. Now, he was he phenomenal? No, but was he adequate? Yeah. He had his ups, he had his downs, and he said he wound up having a rather lengthy career. So the Giants absolutely could have done worse than drafting Gordon King in the first round. All right, so let's see here. And there we are there. So that's I just want to make sure, because I know that there's some trades in here, and I don't want to miss any of them here. All right, so the second round, the Giants drafted Otis McKinney, who only played 2 seasons. He was a defensive back, only played 2 seasons for the Giants. But but he'll be instrumental in a small way. I'll be coming up to that in a few minutes here. But I'm going to bring Otis McKinney's name up in a little while. So they drafted him in the second round. All right. Now, he only played 2 seasons for the Giants. I didn't think he played very long. I just looked. He played 78 and 79 for the Giants. So, once again, a lot of their picks just did not play very long for this team. The drafting was just not phenomenal, shall I say. All right, so round 3. Where are the Giants here? Okay, the Giants, they traded their 3rd round pick, which wound up being Lyman Smith. Well, the Dolphins wound up taking Lyman Smith. All right. Because the Giants had to give and the Giants they traded their 2 3rd-round picks away to the Dolphins. They traded around their 1978 3rd-round pick and their 1979 3rd-round pick to the Dolphins for compensation for Larry Zonka. So the Giants went up with Larry Zonka. Unfortunately, the odd thing about it was this is Larry Zonka's final season with the Giants. Then the odd thing is that the following season, he ended up his career in 1979 with his last season, I believe it was with the Dolphins in 1979. And then in 1979, in the draft, the Dolphins also had the Giants' 3rd-round selection too, for compensation for Larry Zonka. So in 1979, not only did the Dolphins get Larry Zonka back for one more season, but they also had the Giants' 3rd-round pick for compensation for Larry Zonka. So, but it just goes to show you, how kind of weird it is, because the Giants got Larry Zonka. He got from the World Football League, but I guess the Dolphins had his rights. But they got Larry Zonka in 1976. Well, they traded away a third-round pick in 1978 as compensation for him. You know, it wasn't like the next year pick or this. I mean, it was 2 years in the future. Weird. All right, so the Giants didn't have a third round because they traded because they got Larry Zonka. But I know that there's some other trades coming up here. All right, where are we at here? Round 4. Giants took Billy Taylor, a nice running back, not bad. He didn't play a long time once again with the Giants. Let's take a look here, shall we? Billy Taylor, how long did he play for the Giants? He had 4 seasons for the Giants. Actually, it looked like parts of 81 was with the Giants and part of 81 was with the Jets. So he only played a couple seasons for the Giants, but not a bad running back, you know. Especially, I mean, once again, wound up being a 4th rounder. Now the Giants in the 5th round they wound up doing pretty good for themselves. Whoops. All right, let's see here. Was there any other trade? Just want to make sure because I know there's some stuff coming up here. Don't want to miss any. The Giants drafted Terry Jackson, who had a nice career with the Giants. So that was a very good pick in the 5th round for the New York Football Giants. All right, then the Giants, in compensation, they traded Bob Tucker to the Vikings for their. Then they went up with Jim Crawl, who was an offensive lineman. He didn't have a really phenomenal season. I don't even know how long did he last. I mean, his name's not really. I mean, I know he's he was a defensive tackle. I thought he was an offensive player, but okay. Just goes to show you how much I know. He played 1 season for the Giants, a defensive tackle. I thought he was an offensive lineman. Just goes to show you how intelligent I am, huh? So they drafted away Bob Tucker, right? Who'd been a very good tight end for them since 1970. So 70 to 77. So he played 8 good seasons. Well, 77, I think he was hurt. But he had some really good seasons with the Giants. They traded away for Bob Crawl, who played 1 season for the Giants, and that was it. Once again, a lot of the draft picks did not have phenomenal careers with the Giants. All right, so that was, let's see here. I mean, was there anything else? Okay, then this is kind of the kick in the crotch right here. The Giants traded Craig Morton to the Broncos. Good for Craig Morton. He got out of New York. He went to the Denver Broncos, who had a very good defense. They had the Orange Crush. I don't know if you remember them. But they had a nice offense. They had some nice weapons around him, and he took them to a Super Bowl. All right, baby. Way to go, Craig Morton. Congratulations. But the thing is they traded Craig Morton to the Broncos for a 5th round selection and Steve Ramsey. Steve Ramsey was the backup quarterback, I believe, for the Broncos. So the Broncos gave I don't know, maybe he was their starter. I don't know, but because they needed help. So basically the problem was that Steve Ramsey didn't even make the team. So they got Ramsey and they got a 5th round pick from the Broncos for Craig Morton. So the Ramsey didn't even make the team, and the Giants took Brian DeRue. No idea who that is. So the Giants got a guy that never made the team, and Brian DeRue, who I have no idea who that is, for Craig Morton. Now, the kicker of it, the kick right square right in the crotch, right where it really hurts a guy, right square in the crotch, is that the Giants traded a 1st round pick and a 2nd round pick away to get Craig Morton. And in return, they got a 5th round pick and a guy who never made the team. And the 1st round selection they traded away to get Craig Morton wound up being Randy White, a defensive tackle, Hall of Famer. So once again, the Giants, bad trades, bad drafts. I mean, every now and then they get some nice guys, but that would come to an end soon because George Young would start taking over the drafts in 1979. He would be the new general manager after Andy Robustelli would. I think he quit. All right, so now we got round 6 coming up. The Giants took Elliott Walker. Oh, and I'm sorry, Randy Pass. I'll pass on him. You get it? Yeah, he's Randy Pass. I don't even know who that is. I mean, yeah. All right, round 7, the Giants took Dan Dornick, who had a kind of a little lengthy career. He only played like 1 year with the Giants, 1 or 2. He actually wound up playing quite a few years with the Seattle Seahawks. He was like a fullback. Let's take a look here. The guy's name. Oh, that ain't it. There we go. Dan Nornick. How many years did he play for the Giants here? 1. Yeah. He played from 79 to 85 with the Seahawks. So he had a nice career. He was a fullback. 78 to 85, which isn't too bad. Can't complain about that. But most of his career was with the Seahawks. So the Giants drafted him, and he wound up playing with the Seahawks. Anyway, let's go to the next round. Let's see, unless it was a trade. And I know that maybe there's something else coming up. Let's see. What do we got? All right, the Giants in round 8 took Jeff Grady. No idea who that is. Was there any other trade? No. Okay. Round 9, the Giants selected Bill Swiacki. No idea who that is. Let's see. No other trades. Oh, okay. Round 10. The Giants traded Pat Hughes to the Saints. Now, Pat Hughes had been with the Giants for quite some time. He was a decent outside linebacker. I think he wound up finishing his career. He played, might have been 1970 to 77 with the Giants, but then he played a few more seasons, I think it was, as a linebacker with the Saints to end his career. And a rather nice, lengthy career. Wasn't a phenomenal linebacker. He got a lot of time for the Giants, but, wasn't a phenomenal linebacker. But so the Giants traded Pat Hughes away, one of their linebackers, to the Saints. And in return, they got a 10th round selection, who's Greg Jorgensen. No idea who that is. So then the Giants traded away. Okay, now this didn't wind up being too bad. They traded away their pick to the Packers because they got Joe Danello, who wound up being their kicker for quite some time. Now, Joe always kept things exciting. Joe, he was always kind of exciting. He wasn't always the most accurate kicker or whatever, but he could boom them. So the Giants got Joe Danello from the Packers, and they traded away their 1977 7th round selection. And from the year before, and then they traded away their 10th round pick this year, which wound up being Mark Totten. That's who the Packers picked. So the Giants, with their traded away 2 late picks to get Joe Danello. So that worked out pretty good for the Giants. All right, let's see. Anything else? We got round 11. I think there's 12 rounds. All right, where we at? The Giants round 11 took Dennis Heim, no idea who that is. And then round 12, final round. Okay. The Giants selected Greg Lawson. Yeah, don't know how that is. That's Greg Lawson from Western Illinois, running back. Yeah, he didn't even make the pros. I can't even click on him. Yeah, he didn't even want to make it the pros. So. Once again, so-so. Very so-so draft. I mean, as I said, Gordon King wasn't too bad of a tackle. He certainly could have been better, could have been worse. All right, so the Giants, they played 6 preseason games. They were 1. Whoops. Let's see here. They played 6 preseason games. All right, let's see here. All right, did they play 6? Cowboys. No, they played 4. Oh, you know why they played 4? That's why. Because they started a 16-game schedule. So they went from like 6 preseason games down to 4. So basically, it was always like 20 games. When it was a 14-game schedule, for the most part, they had 6 preseason games, for the most part. Now that the 16-game schedule, they went down to 4 preseason games, which makes so much more sense. And actually, I mean, if you go for it, I mean, I like the way it is with 3 preseason games now. I mean, that's adequate. I hope they don't go too much lower than that. I understand with the injuries and all that. I can get that. But if you got a guy that's on the roster bubble trying to make a spot, you're trying to get the guy in on as many plays as you possibly can. If you take all the preseason games away, I mean, how are some of these guys trying to, earn a roster spot if you can't even see these guys play in actual when the Bullets are live, right? So, but anyway, the Giants had 4 preseason games. They were 2-2. The first preseason game was a Monday night, I guess, against the Cleveland Browns on August 7th. They would win 21-7. Then the Giants, the final 3 games were all at home. They played the Jets and they lost 27-23. Then they would play the Pittsburgh Steelers and they would win 13-6. Then they would play the Chargers and they would lose 17-6. So the Giants had preceded 2-2. Not bad. All right, so let's see here. The Giants, once again, the offense was just really horrible. I mean, it was better because in 76 and 77, they averaged like 12 points a game. Well, at least this year they got up to 16.5 points a game. But still, they were 19th out of 28 in the team. It's for just 16.5 points a game. It was just horrible, really bad. The defense only gave up 18.6 points a game. But, I mean, once again, it's the theory of relativity. If your offense is better, your offense is on the field controlling the clock is running, your defense is on the sideline drinking Kool-Aid, how many points is your defense giving up while it's standing on the sideline? None, because you got a good offense. When your offense stinks, that means your defense is going to look worse than it actually is, and that's what happened. So, once again, the Giants had a nice defense, but their offense did not help them out at all. Let's see. I mean, the Giants had. This is like the trifecta here. This is like my all-time favorite right here. Giants had Joe Pisarcik, Jerry Goldstein, and Randy Dean all play games. They all started for the Giants. Joe Pisarcik started 12 games. Jerry Goldstein started 2. Randy Dean started 2. What do we got? Yeah, that's about what exactly it. Yeah. They threw 13. Well, the year before they had 6 touchdown passes. At least this year they got up to 13 touchdown passes. They threw 27 interceptions, 13 and 27. So bro, I mean, it just goes to show you how the defense was back then. The defense only gave up 10 touchdown passes all season long, and they had 21 interceptions. So their defense was very, very good. I said the Giants, 2,428 yards passing. I mean, just. What was their average? The completion percentage was 46.1%. I mean, Jerry Goldstein, who started 2 games for the Giants, his completion percentage was 30%. He was 12 out of 40 in 2 games for the Giants. I mean, my God. Randy Dean, who started 2 games, his completion percentage was 48.7%. And Joe Pisarcik, who started 12 games for the Giants, was 47.5% completion percentage. I mean, he threw 12 touchdown passes, but he threw 23 interceptions. Doug Kotar led the Giants in rushing with 625. Bobby Hammond was second with 554. Larry Zock had 311 yards. Billy Taylor at 250. Dan Dornick had 306. So they had a bunch of guys. Willie Spencer had 61 yards. So they had a bunch of guys. They ran for over 2,300 yards. They averaged 4 yards a carry. Their problem was they were a little weak against the run. They gave up 25 rushing touchdowns. So they gave up a lot of rushing touchdowns. But this was also, the Giants and John Mendenhall, he was starting to get up there in age a little bit. So, but, I mean, for the most part, the Giants defense did a very, very good job. Let's see, what are we at here? This year, last year, Jimmy Robinson led the team in receptions with 22 receptions in 14 games. At least this year, Jimmy Robinson had 32 receptions. Johnny Perkins had 32 receptions, but still absolutely horrible. 16-game schedule. Your leading receiver has 32 receptions. Your leading receiver catches 2 passes a game. I mean, Doug Kotar had 22 receptions out of the backfield. Bobby Hammond had 20. Dan Dornick had 12. But, I mean, it's just horrible, absolutely horrible, production. I mean, they didn't have a quarterback. But George Young would take care of that in the 1979 draft. Joe Danello was very good. He was 21 out of 29, 72.4% he kicked. So, I mean, there's a very good season for him. I mean, but once again, their offense was just not up to par. Okay, so we did the draft. We did their preseason games. So now let's go through their regular season. All right. Their games. As I said, they started off actually 5-3. They would win the first game of the season. They would play in Tampa Bay and they win 19-13. Start off 1-0. Then the Dallas Cowboys would come to town. So they started the season early too. The first game of the season was actually was a Saturday. They played in Tampa Bay. They played September 2nd. And they won 19-13. The next week was on a Sunday, September 10th. They played the Cowboys game to town. They lose 34-24. Now, see, this was once again, this was in that era. The Giants finally started beating the Cardinals. They finally, for the longest time, they lost 11 times in a row to the Redskins. Well, they started changing that around. They started beating the Redskins, but they still were not able to beat the Cowboys or the Eagles. That hardest time beating those guys. Let's see here. Is that it? Bam. Now the Cowboys would beat the Giants. I think it was. I gotta look here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. The Cowboys would beat the Giants 20 out of 23 times from 1968 to 1980. They would beat the Giants 20 out of 23 times. They would beat the Giants 12 times in a row from 1974 to 1980. They would beat the Giants 12 times in a row. The Eagles also beat the let's see here. I believe the Eagles beat the Giants like I think it was 11 or 12 times in a row as well too. So I mean the Giants, the Giants didn't beat the Eagles at home from 1973 to 1981. They tied in 1973, but they didn't beat them. So from 1973 to 1981 at home, the Giants did not beat the Eagles. And of course, the miracle at the Meadowlands was one of those that helped there that keep that streak going. But the Giants, they still couldn't beat the Eagles. They still couldn't beat the Cowboys. So at the Giants, after they lost to the Cowboys 34-24, they were 1-1. Then they won their next two games at home against weaker opponents. The Kansas City Chiefs were not very good, and neither were the San Francisco 49ers. The Giants would win 26-10 against the Chiefs, and then 27-10 against the 49ers. Now the Giants are 3-1. And I'm like, oh my goodness. Wow. Then the following week, the Giants would go to Atlanta, and they would lose 23-20. The Giants had 8 first downs in that game. The Falcons had 22 first downs. The Giants had 146 yards of offense. Falcons had 350 yards of offense. So, I mean, the Giants are lucky they're in the game. So the Giants lost 3-2. I'm sorry, fell to 3-2 after the 23-20 loss. Now, when the Giants went into into Dallas the following week, Dallas, I believe, the Giants were 3-2. The Cowboys were 4-1. So if the Giants were able to beat the Cowboys, they both would have been, I think, in first place at 4-2. So that was a big game. I remember the game being on TV, watching. It was on at 4:00 in the afternoon, and hoping that the Giants would wind up winning, and that wasn't happening. So the Cowboys wind up winning. 24-3. The Cowboys wound up winning. So I'm saying, so if the Giants had won, I had some hope there. The Giants were 3-2. The Cowboys were 4-1. If the Giants would have won, they would have been tied for first. But so they lost. The Cowboys were a very good team, so they lost. Now the Giants are 3-3. Then the Giants would beat the Buccaneers once again. Buccaneers came to town. The Giants would beat them. So now the Giants are 4-3. Then the Giants would beat the Redskins once again, 17-6 at home. So now the Giants are 5-3. Halfway through the 16-game schedule, the Giants are 5-3. They got a winning record. They got a chance maybe being on the wild card. Whew. Nah, of course not. So I said, so the Giants would wind up losing, what was it, their next 6 games. They would lose 7 out of the last 8, but they would lose their next 6 games. They would go on the road, and they would lose to a bad New Orleans Saints team, 28-17. Then they would go on the road, and they would lose to the St. Louis Cardinals, 20-10. So now the Giants are 5-5. Then the Giants, they lost an overtime game in Washington. I guess it was Mark Mosley kicked the overtime field goal. Mark Mosley. Let's see here. What was the field goal? Kicked a 45-yard field goal. In overtime. So, yeah. So now the Giants went from 5-3. Now they're 5-6. Now this is where they come against. This is against the Miracle of the Meadowlands game. Miracle of Meadowlands won on Sunday, November 19th. The Eagles come to town. The Eagles wind up winning 19-17. Well, the Giants had the ball. There was about 4 minutes to go in the game. They're just running the ball, trying to run the clock out, I guess, and all. And they were up 17-12. The Eagles had just scored a touchdown to make it 17-12. I think the Eagles missed both. I think the Eagles scored 2 touchdowns, and they missed both of their extra points. But they just scored on a 1-yard touchdown run. Mike Hogan ran in for a 1-yard touchdown run. They missed both their extra points. So that's how they got 12 points. So the Giants are up 17-12. Well, the Giants had the ball 4 minutes ago in the game. And Doug Coder gets the ball. He gets hit, big hit. Ball pops out. The Eagles get the ball around like the Giants 35 or 40-yard line or so. So the Eagles got the ball. They just scored a touchdown. They're in 17-12. All they got to do is score another touchdown, and they wind up winning the game pretty much. Well, what winds up happening is they got down to about a minute 40 or so in the game. The Eagles just ran a running play. So the clock's running. The running play didn't go real well. The Giants stopped it. So so Ron Jaworski gets him up to the line of scrimmage, and he calls the play, and so he drops back to pass, and John Mendenhall puts on a heavy rush up the middle. So John Mendenhall comes running in. Ron Jaworski, it looked like he was going to get ready to throw, but he had like double punch. He stepped to the side. John Mendenhall missed him. John Mendenhall regathers himself, looks like he's going to go for Ron Jaworski. Ron Jaworski, lets it go. He throws it a little bit high. I think it was Hogan, their running back, number 35, was out about 6-7 yards, 8 yards down the field. So due to the heavy rush, the Giants had a nice rush on, but also thanks to John Mendenhall, Ron Jaworski threw the ball. It went a little high, so it went through Hogan's hands. He tipped it, went the tip drill, right? Otis McKinney, right? What I said was going to come full circle with him. And, this Giants second round selection was there, picked it off, ran it back 5, 6, 7, 8 yards, whatever it was. And I think it was a minute 32 to go in the game. I think the Eagles had 1 timeout left, maybe. So basically all the Giants had to do was basically pretty much run the clock out. So they ran, I think they ran a couple plays, but one of the plays was they fell on the ball. Let me see. Their offensive coordinator, Bob Gibson. I mean, it just goes to show you where they get some of these guys at. Wow. I mean, he had no offensive coordinator experience in his history that I can see. I mean, he was with a high school team. Then he was an offensive line coach for Bowling Green. Then he was with the Memphis Southmen, I guess, of the WFL, the Charlotte Hornets. Then he was the Detroit Lions offensive back coach in 1976. So the Giants bring him in 1977, make him the offensive coordinator. So he's calling plays. So the Giants, Joe Pisarcik lands on the ball. He takes a snap and falls down on the ball. Well, John LeMaster is trying to get in there, and Gary Shirk is trying to block him, and they wind up kind of tripping over Pisarcik, who was on the ground. Somebody goes in there and touches Pisarcik down, calls the play dead. But then like a little scuffle ensues, right? So this guy Bob Gibson kind of, I think, said to himself or something. It's like, if I just, the Eagles are being pretty aggressive in there, even when we just lay down on the ball. So I don't want any of my guys to get into a fight or get penalties or anything like that. So we're just going to run the ball. All right, run out the clock and the game will be over. So instead of kneeling down on the ball and maybe getting into a fight because the Eagles are being, a little too aggressive or something or whatever, let's just run the ball, run the clock out, and we'll win. Well, of course, then on the next play, one of the next plays, Joe Pisarcik takes a snap and he has to turn around and hand the ball off to Larry Zonka. Well, the snap comes up. He didn't get the snap, and he's got to turn around all the way around to the other side to hand the ball to. Instead of getting the ball and just handing it off, he's got to. You get the ball comes up. He's juggling it. Has to turn all the way around to hand the ball off to Larry Zonka. Well, by the time he gets to Larry Zonka's past him, he basically hands the ball off to Larry Zonka's hip, bounces in the air, and Herm Edwards there to pick it up, runs it in for a touchdown. Of course, the Giants wind up losing. Well, this guy, Bob Gibson, wound up being the scapegoat. So he wound up getting fired the next day. He never coached again. He never talked about the play, nothing. It says here on Wikipedia that, was it in 1970, ESPN reached him by phone in 2008. He said, I haven't talked about that game for 30 years, and I'm not about to start now. So he never really he never talked. He never coached ever again after that play. After he got fired on Monday. So he was the scapegoat, and basically the whole coaching staff pretty much, I think, got fired after the season was over. John McVay was fired. Andy Robustelli, the director of operations, I think he just stepped down. So pretty much cleaned house. So in 1979, the Giants were looking for a new general manager, which they got. We'll go over that story tomorrow. And they got Ray Perkins, the head coach, who would lead them to a playoff appearance. But that was the miracle of the Meadowlands debacle. I mean, it was just that's why teams just kneel down on the ball now, and that's why they got guys flanked all around them just in case the ball bounces out or something. You'll have guys there, or just they'll have somebody lined up 7, 8, 10 yards behind the quarterback in case the ball bounces out or something, and somebody picks it up like Herm Edwards. You'll have a guy there to maybe try to make a tackle or something like that. So I mean, that's why things are the way they are now. Some of it has to do with the miracle of the Meadowlands. I mean, it was just but I mean, the guy, Bob Gibson, should have still maybe called the kneel down or something, right? But, you also look at it, too. He was not the one that screwed up the snap. I mean, whether there was a bad snap or Pisarcik didn't get the snap or he did, I mean, if the ball's flopping around the edge, maybe get it because he had control of it when he turned around, but he passed it off Zonka's hip. So, I mean, instead of doing that, then, just maybe lay on the ball. I mean, so was Bob Gibson the one that Bob Gibson called in the stupid play? Yep. But he was not the one that screwed the play up. He's not the one that screwed the football snap up. He wound up being the scapegoat. And it was a shame because he never coached ever again. He had been coaching since the 50s, never coached again. So the Giants, let's see, and then they lost the Miracle in Meadowlands. The following week, the Giants were up 17-7 in the third quarter with about 20 minutes to go in the game. The Giants were up 17-7. They lost 41-17. The Bills scored 5 rushing touchdowns in the final about 20 minutes of the game. What was it? The Giants gave up 366 yards rushing. I mean, it got to be at a point in the fourth quarter where they were just so tired and exhausted. They just couldn't stop anything. The Bills just kept gashing them, run after run after run after run. But the Giants were up 17-7, and they gave up 34 points in the final 20 minutes of the game. Just an absolute total embarrassment. Then the Giants lost the following week. They lost at home to the Rams, 20-17. The Giants totally outplayed the Rams. The Rams picked the pass off and ran it back for a touchdown. That was one of the ways they won the game. The Rams were good. The Rams were very good that year. Rams, went to the playoffs and everything. The Giants totally outplayed them. Giants had 333 yards of offense. The Rams had 192. The Giants had 5 turnovers in that game. They only lost by 3 points, and one of them cost them 7 points. The Giants should have won that game. That was an embarrassment. They blew it. Finally, they won their 6th game of the season, the second to last game of the year. Sunday, December 10th, the Cardinals came to town. The Giants shut them out 17-0. And then the final game of the season, the Giants went on the road. You figure they would try to get some revenge against the Eagles, but they lost 20-3. They were just, I don't know. I guess they packed it in. I'm not sure that's what you want to call it, but So another horrible season for the New York Giants, but things would get cleared out. Big changes would be coming for the Giants. So let's go over the 1978 season. I'll just go over it real fast here instead of, let's see. All right. In the AFC, the Patriots won their division with a record of 11-5. The Dolphins were the wild card team. They were 11-5. The Steelers won their division. They were 14-2. The Houston Oilers were 10-6. They were the other wild card team. And in the AFC West, the Denver Broncos won. They were with a record of 10-6. So in the AFC, the wild card game in the first week of the playoffs, the Houston Oilers beat the Miami Dolphins 17-9. So in the second week, there was 2 games in the AFC. Houston Oilers beat the New England Patriots 31-14. Then the Pittsburgh Steelers beat the Denver Broncos 33-10, which set up the AFC Championship game. There'll be back-to-back AFC Championship games with the Houston Oilers and the Pittsburgh Steelers playing each other. Well, this time the Steelers won 34-5. This one wasn't close, which sent the Pittsburgh Steelers to the Super Bowl. In the NFC, this is where the Eagles get the football gods strike down the Eagles and tell them to go F themselves. And good. I was so happy for this. More on that in just a second. Dallas Cowboys would win the NFC East. They were 12-4. The Eagles came in second place, so they were a wild card team. They were 9-7. Minnesota Vikings won the NFC Central. They won a tiebreaker with the Green Bay Packers. That both teams were 8-7-1. The Vikings would win, and I think this was the game that they won. They beat the Cleveland Browns in the final game of the season. Was this the Cleveland Brown game? Was the deal coming? Oh, maybe not. Nope, guess not. Maybe that was the year before. It was a miracle finish the Vikings had against the Cleveland Browns. Maybe that was the year before. So maybe that was 77, or maybe it was 79, but obviously wasn't 78. So the Vikings finished 8-7-1. So the Vikings won the NFC Central. NFC West, the Rams were 12-4. That was the team the Giants should have beaten. They outplayed them, should have beat them, blew it. And then the Falcons were the other wild card team. They were 9-7. So in the NFC, the wild card, all right, the first week was just one game played in the NFC. The Eagles lost 14-13 because they missed an extra point. Good, because you suck, Eagles. Good. Yeah, you deserve that. You don't deserve the win. You're lucky you got in. You're freaking lucky you got in. You guys suck. So good. Glad you lost 14-13 on the missed extra point. Good. So in the second week, the Atlanta Falcons played the Dallas Cowboys. It was 27-20. The Cowboys would win 27-20. And in the Los Angeles Coliseum, the Rams would beat the Vikings 34-10. Setting up the championship game, the Dallas Cowboys would beat the Los Angeles Rams 28-0. However, this would be the last time that the Rams would wind up losing to the Cowboys. In 1979, the Rams would finally beat the Dallas Cowboys in the playoffs. Finally. They always had the hardest time. So that would set up the Super Bowl between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Dallas Cowboys, which wound up being a very, very, very good Super Bowl. I mean, some things went, maybe both ways. Quite a few things went against the Cowboys. Randy White wound up picking up after the is this showing here? I don't even. Oh, maybe. Oh, maybe. Might have been. Maybe. Well, I know anyway. The Steelers had just scored. I'm not sure if it was the Franco Harris touchdown that put them up 28-17, maybe. Then they kicked off. Randy White got the ball. He had a broken hand, or he had a cast on his hand or something like that. So he couldn't hold the ball real well. So he had the ball with his cast. Starts running with it. I think he got hit or whatever. Fumbles it because he couldn't hold on to it. Steelers recover it. Now, it might have been almost the next play or so. Lynn Swann had an 18-yard touchdown reception. Yeah, that might have been it. Yeah, the very next play. I think Lynn Swann got an 18-yard touchdown reception. That was a great reception. In the back of the end zone, got 2 feet down. Great throw by Bradshaw. Great catch by Swann. 2 feet down, touchdown. Put them up 35-17. Well, the Cowboys clawed their way back, and they wound up losing. They scored 2 touchdowns in the final couple minutes of the game. They wound up losing 35-31. It was a really, really Super Bowl. The Steelers won. That was the Steelers' third Super Bowl, and the Cowboys just came short just once again. So, but that pretty much wraps up the 1978 season for the New York Giants. Came so close. I mean, they were 5-3, and they had chances. And I said the miracle of the Meadowlands was something us Giants fans, if you ever watched it on TV or watch it on YouTube, it's something you'll never forget. The stupidity of it, the patheticness of it. It happened to the Eagles, which makes it even worse. You don't know if the Giants actually won that game and they finished, say, 7-9. Would John McVay have actually kept his job after the season was over or not? But I think they pretty much cleaned house after the 78 season. As I said, Andy Robustelli was the director of operations. I think he quit. He stepped down or whatever it was. John McVay was fired. I'm not sure if all the other guys were fired too. But I said that the one guy, Bob Gibson, he was fired the day after, the offensive coordinator. So things were changing. 1979, we get new GM. New obviously some new coaches. Some guy maybe like Bill Parcells would start hanging around town. Maybe you heard of him. Ray Perkins, right? Somewhere down the road, we were going to get some guy by the name of Bill Belichick somewhere down the road. So maybe you heard of him too. So things were starting to change. So the Giants would have to have a couple more losing seasons before they would actually get a winning season. But when they had their winning season, they also got to the playoffs for the first time since 1963. So that pretty much wraps up the 1978 debacle for the New York Giants. Miracle in the Meadowlands won. I'll be back again tomorrow with the 1979 season for the Giants, which just happened to be the 55th season in the history of the New York Giants. I'll see you then.